Hello hero, it's Lucy Lannon. This is your DIY custom built, ultra personalised and aesthetic epic. So let's write some mythical magnificence together so you can live it up and soak it in differently to how you did yesterday. This is your scheduled love transmission, however, things are taking a strange turn. I think it would be beneficial for you guys if I split these love transmissions into singles and couples. Now, I can hear some of you in the situationship kind of territory already saying, well, what about us? We're not really a defined thing, but we're also not together. So do I take it as a single because I'm not technically taken? Good news, if that's you, both readings are for you each and every time I upload, right? But specifically for people who are single with nobody in mind at all, or with someone in mind who like they don't have a sort of ongoing thing with, i.e. just a crush, or for people who've been in an established couple for a while, I'd no longer want to leave you guys out of love readings. I don't like the idea that a lot of my subscribers are potentially part of a couple and they're not getting any love feedback from me, or they're having to like hear out a really long single reading in order to kind of tailor the information for them. So that ends here, that ends today. Basically, what I'm saying is that down in the timestamps, near the like button, we have two options. Choose as you see fit. Like I say, if you're between two worlds, that is absolutely appropriate for this deck right here. And you can just watch both readings. But we're using the Twin Peaks Magician Longs to Sea tarot deck today. And we're beginning with singles, because those of you who have the benefit of couples or maybe poly relationships, you already get a partner, guys. You can wait a little while, okay? Right. So let's go first for my singles. Just so you couples know, I will be taking whichever cards we use for the singles out of your reading, so we're not going to get the same result twice. That's so that if I do have any situationship people, they're getting the full benefit of the deck and they're not getting repeat messages. Or if they are in terms of interpretation, they know it's because it's like come up twice in divination terms. I hope I'm making sense. Without further ado, let's shuffle this incredibly rad deck. I've used this on the channel before, but I don't think I've used it for a love reading. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And I am going to take reversals for this just because it's an additional 78 meanings. We always like to get more meaning, more inclusion, right? More specificity, which seems to be the name of the game today. That may be even something for you singles who sort of have your eye on someone but kind of sort of not really. Maybe specificity is something you've been seeking and that's why it's come to me today to change the way that I do this. But let's have a look, shall we? Ooh, whoa, all right, you want to come out. We'll take 3 and then we'll go from there, I think. Thank you kindly. I'm going to flip this as it's already out and this bad boy hanging. Oh, okay, we're taking more than 3. All right. Or are we? You're first, are you? Okay, so we have a Justice reversed, a 6 of Swords, an Emperor, a Knight of Cups, and a 7 of Swords. Interesting stuff. What I want to say is that you're not choosing to be single. You think it's been a kind of unjust thing or something that's been thrust upon you. You may have had to leave a connection, or for some of you like a town or a friendship group or something adjacent to that, because of needing to emotionally and intellectually I want to say leave somebody specific behind. So whether this is someone from a previous relationship that was kind of enmeshed with your family, friends, location, something like that, or whether it was just that there was no involvement with anybody else, but you had to get a person out of your head. I feel like you've made that journey, but in doing so, it's like there's no option, or it feels like there's no options available to you now. And I think that this is a recent past thing, just because we've got the Emperor with Ben here, and you're sort of moving from a space of, these guys are all book house boys, right? If you haven't seen Twin Peaks, it just means these are all investigative energies belonging to the same kinds of group. And then there's this person who's very much separate from all of that, who's indulging in his baguette, who's enjoying his position as the owner of a hotel sat on his throne. This throne in particular means that he's very in tune with his environment, which I think, wherever you've gone to, even if it's just going somewhere intellectually, not actually moving, I think you're much happier for the movement away from whatever this was. And I think you're feeling in control, organised, you're enjoying your indulgences, you might be making better money because he's holding this coin here. Or is it a token? It might be a token for one-eyed jacks, in which case you might be enjoying indulgences of all kinds. But I certainly think, like, even if you're having fun somewhere, you're very much in the space of being single, and that's why you chose this. And I don't think that that is a serious thing, right? You exchange a token for something bigger. So I feel like whatever connections you've had going in a sort of peripheral or maybe sexually indulgent way for some, I don't think any of them are really grabbing you. I think it's just a case of like, this guy's facing away from all of this. You're moving into a new headspace. You're indulging in the pleasures that you can indulge in. And you're enjoying the fact that in this new zone, you seem to have mastery over your circumstances. That said, there is still this feeling of injustice regarding your love life. I dare say for some of you, there's a feeling that there are sexual options, but that there's nothing you can really connect with on an emotional level anymore. And that may be because the emotional investment that you had was very much in whatever this was that you had to leave. Or maybe even just like the things and people around it. Even if this wasn't the emotional burden itself, because it's swords, not cups, I still feel like there was some shit around this that you had to step away from. And it's just been no good for your emotional well-being on a one-on-one level. I'm getting like an image now of somebody who's on a night out and could maybe pull on that night out and maybe meet people. And, if that's not your thing and you're not into casual connections, maybe it's just that you get a lot of flirtations going on, you're really enjoying yourself, having time with your friends, etc. But it's like then you go home and the bed feels a little bit big and you're like a little bit sad that even if you met somebody, you wouldn't have them to stay, right? You wouldn't want them to be involved for more than a night. There's this feeling of being very in control on the surface of it, maybe even being somebody that's got quite a lot of jealousy around them, because the Emperor's a kind of CEO figure. For some of you, you'll identify with like boss bitch type stuff. And it's like this, it's a figure who, because it's corporate and also because it's Ben in this deck, there could be a lot of people like throwing shade on how successful you are. And when you're out partying, it's easy to forget about the impact of those people and to be like, look, I don't give a shit. I'm spending my money. I'm having a great time, whatever. Or maybe this is even at work for some of you, like you're doing very well, but then it's like you come home, you lock the door behind you, and there's definitely this sort of callback to where it is that you've come from. I dare say, even though you've left it physically, maybe even left it emotionally, in terms of ruminating on it, which is a very swords thing, you haven't fully separated from your past yet. Knight of Cups with Seven of Swords. I feel like somebody, I think it's an emotional betrayal. I'm going to say it. I'm going to be more specific. Again, specificity was the name of the game, right? I think actually it's not just generally a place or a set of friends or whatever, but I think specifically you were promised something by somebody who looked very good. Note that it's, oh God, he's my favourite character. Why can't I remember his name? Come on, brain. Come on. No, it's completely gone. I'll put it in the captions or I'll do something with it. But because it's this guy, right, the fashion entrepreneur of Twin Peaks, I feel like somebody presented to you with all the bells and whistles of someone who could be emotionally fulfilling. But notice they're facing away from you, right? Whatever iteration of this is you, and that'll, depending on where you identify harder, up to you. But this person is facing away from that. They're not even in your eye line. It may have been even someone who had trouble making eye contact with you after a certain point where the kind of mask slipped. But there's certainly a feeling here like they came in on their white charger, offering you what appeared to be their kind of cup of love. I know it's a cliche, but that is a Knight of Cups thing. Offering you maybe long-term in a way that never transpired, or saying that they had some kind of emotional kinship with you. And I think part of the intellectual separation from this is that you're slowly realising, for some of you months or even years on, that the connection really wasn't there to begin with. I think at the time you fully thought it was, because they had all of the bells and whistles of being emotionally fulfilling. I'm not going to generalise under this label because it is a medical label and I don't want to do that. But for a small number of you, this was a narcissist and they came in doing the love bombing thing. And then lo and behold, there was nothing underneath it. There was no real personality. There was no kind of identity, personhood to connect with in terms of your kind of more empathic nature and your filled out personality. I think for some, this person reflected back to you what it was that you thought you wanted without ever actually possessing any of those traits. And they may have been somebody who was very fulfilling to the people around you, which is why it's kind of a collective leaving of a situation. So where you started to doubt the relationship, where you maybe thought that there was something fishy or something absent, or again, just some cases that you might have been gaslit, I think that everybody around you that was also around this person would be like, well, how could you possibly think that of this person? Because they present so well, right? But notice the horse here, it's like not, the leg is up, but it's not a movement forward. It's almost like a protest, right? So there's this is your gut, this is your intuition being like, I don't know, man, there's something off about it. And I think that this was proven correct from the fact that we then move into the Seven of Swords, which for many of you is an affair, it's a direct betrayal, it's somebody sneaking around, lying about what they were doing. For the small number of you who were open or poly or whatever, I feel like even if you agreed upon certain things with this person, they were still lying. There's still maybe even some stuff to find out about all of this. And I think that that's why you're still dwelling on it, right? We've got a 6 here and we've not really let go and we're moving into the 7. So we've changed location, we've even changed persona, we've leveled up, we've had some people in our lives a little bit jealous of where we've sort of moved to. And yet, when you turn the lights off and that door's locked behind you again, the thing that you think about is this betrayal. So, with that in mind, what's coming in? Oh, okay. And why is that then? I'm just going to check we're all on camera, guys, because this is very ad hoc. Yeah, we're all good, aren't we? All right, so 2 of Pentacles in reverse is an interesting one for incoming, as is an Empress in reverse when you've got an Emperor over here. You don't have to be masculine identified or male, but I'm seeing you as this Emperor figure, and I'm seeing a potential person coming in as the Empress, but with them being in reverse, there is a sense that you might have somebody peripheral to you who, if you don't have your eye on them, they already have their eye on you. They are aware of you. I think your reputation spreads far and wide. I know it's not as true of the newer season, but in the old Twin Peaks, Ben was very much kind of the heart and soul and cogs of the machinery of Twin Peaks as a town, right? Everybody knew his name. Everybody knew of the Horns, the hotel, the mill, etc. And I think that wherever you're set up now, and again, for some of you, it's not even related to a physical location. I don't know why I'm touching that. White, maybe. If you've moved somewhere, there might be the word white in the name. Let me know in the comments if that's a confirmation for you. It's just a random thing. Anyway, if it's not that you've gone to a physical place, I still think the reputation of you having moved on is spreading, and there is somebody who sees you as single, even if you don't kind of see yourself processing it as single, who thinks that you are their counterpart, and I think that you are. But I think whether you're conscious of it or not, you're kind of blocking this person from entering back into your life. Ooh, that was a Freudian slip. entering into, or for many of you back into your life, might give a clue as to who they are. Because you're kind of juggling the concept of new stuff with the old, right? How do I want to say this? The guy in this scene, right? We've already mentioned One-Eyed Jacks, and we've mentioned this sort of coin or token as a symbol for indulging in earthly pleasures, shall we say. I have to be very careful the words I use on YouTube because they're cracking down on readers at the moment. If you did want an explicit reading, please book with me. But there's the sense like this guy is juggling his tokens, right? And also in this scene, he is the guy in One-Eyed Jacks, indulging in his fetish, right? So there may be some element of that connecting to your past. I feel like for some of you, you can't separate from the sex with this person as well. Whether that was because it was serving a particular kink you have, or whether it's because it was traumatic sex in the case of a narcissist, it quite often is, right? It's quite often an experience that you can't recount to other people as being defective in any real way you can put your finger on, but also something which every time leaves you feeling very adrenalized, very jarred. For those of you familiar with subdrop, from what I know, the experience of having sex with a narcissist is a little bit like having subdrop afterwards, whether or not there was that kind of play involved. So it's 50-50 really. Some of you, there's a sexual identifier with your ex where maybe that's something you're seeking elsewhere and it's meaning you're looking in the wrong places, or you're kind of not ready to look, or there's something around body image here. And then for another chunk of you, there's something to do with a past person that was a direct sexual trauma for you, and that meant that sex now feels like a betrayal, right? Excuse me, come on words, communication. Sex is communication. I feel like I need to say that because I don't know the full age range of my viewership right now, but I think a lot of that is lost on like the younger crowd these days. I think we see a lot of porn, we see a lot of shows glamorizing the same, and you kind of forget that it's meant to be an exercise in intimacy, or it's meant to be a way of getting something across to another person even as you're having fun, right? Or at least that's the way it used to be for us oldies. Man, I sound ancient right now, but I feel like they need to point that out. I think that's why my speech fucked up. Because I think maybe you've been fucking and not having sex for a while. And maybe that's even why you feel a bit lonely. Because maybe you felt lonely with this person in that kind of a way. But there's some sense that you need to reconnect back to the idea of sex being a fulfilling thing for you. Whether that's from a place where you acknowledge that it was traumatizing, or whether it's from a place of like, you know what, this person was a shithead, but the sex was kind of good, and that cements what I'm looking for, right? Or what's coming in for me next. So I think that's a big part of this card, but I also want to say that because he's juggling pentacles, it's like you're managing different facets of yourself in competition with each other. Competition being a very pentacles thing because it's related to work, the body, the income, etc. a lot of the time. So it's like you're juggling a lifestyle where you're like, oh, can I be something beyond single? Can I fit it in? Right? Excuse me, hiccups confirmation. But then at the same time also, you're juggling the idea of this token thing of relating to sex in a specific way, and you're juggling your past with your future. That's what I want to say. So even if you're like, well, I'm not sure I identify with this because I haven't had a relationship for a long time, or I thought we were on pretty good terms, or something like that, I still feel like there's a bit of this that remains unprocessed. And my last, I want to say 2 readings on this channel at the time that this is airing might be relevant to you, because both of them are about moving on from something which isn't fully understood, okay, or letting something go. With the Empress in reverse as well, it's like, I'm being pulled to say that the sacral chakra, which is like the sexual centre in spiritual traditions, but originally sort of in more tantric senses, This is connected to creativity very directly. So if you're somebody who writes, makes music, does art, I don't know, makes movies, does voice acting, whatever, like, up to you what your form of creativity is, but you may feel a little bit stagnant in that area in a way that it's not being kind of important enough to express to people, because that area of your life is maybe a luxury for you anyway. It's like a sort of hobby thing. But I feel like the reason you're feeling stuck in that is related to your sex life. I feel like, you know, it's like the throat and the sacral are so often connected. If you get a blockage in one, it tends to relate to a blockage in the other. If you can't speak your mind to someone or communicate accurately, it's often because there's an issue around sex or creativity or something like that, and vice versa, right? If there's an issue in your creativity centre, it's sometimes difficult to speak up. And with me having the Freudian slip earlier as well, for some of you, this is somebody coming back who you had communication problems with before, and you would like to not be single and be with this person, but I'm being pulled to say until you sort out whatever this sexual stuff is, you're not going to find the words to tell this person what you were feeling, what you are feeling. And I think that the key to doing all of this is processing your, I want to say recent past, because even if this isn't, the experience of moving away from it and stepping into Emperor energy certainly is, right? Getting back on your game, leveling up a bit, maybe entering a new environment, again, for some of you, is very much like it just happened, and that's why we're talking about this now. If you're not identifying with somebody from your past, or you're not sort of like honing in on it based on that, other indicators for this person, the name Catherine, they may have red hair, they may be somebody who's intensely creative, they may be somebody either curvy or like fertile looking in whatever gender you're after. So if you're looking more for men, fertility in the male form is basically a translation of health. So do they look like they take care of themselves? They're physically fit. They're sort of, I'm getting like complexion stuff, like they're, even if they're of a darker complexion, they're sort of, like I'm getting somebody who looks flushed, like they've been running or working out, or just like an image of someone really muscled with sweat on their brow, but they're a little bit rosy cheeked as well. You know, it's like that feeling of vibrant health. And often the markers of what cross-culturally we consider conventionally attractive, they're not just dictated by Hollywood and stuff, they are actually fertility markers. So because the Empress energy is about fertility, whether or not you want to procreate, whether or not you're down with that imagery, I want to say that a way of finding this person is that they look juicy, they look fit, they look vibrant, they look like you want to reproduce with them if you were up for doing that with anybody. And again, that's equally there for my same sex or other kinds of connections that don't want a child. We're just saying, if you could pick anybody, if that was on your mind, this person would be striking you as a fit mother, father, or non-specific parent, right? So that's how you're going to kind of know who this is. With it being the owner of the mill as well, I want to say that they might have an industrial background, and that could be in terms of occupation or in terms of tastes, right? We may be talking industrial music or sort of connections to sampled sound or like goth tunes or that sort of era of music, sort of spanning 80s to 90s, throbbing gristle kind of territory, right? If that's for you, you'll know what I mean. If it's not, let it slide, it's all good. Now, with the Knight of Swords racing in, this is somebody who's able to be very communicative with you verbally. I dare say in the past, if this is someone familiar to you, they might have been a little bit too communicative or a bit too quick to say things that you felt were hasty, or were a bit kind of, like I'm getting somebody just talking in a way that's like the words are running away with them and they're not paying attention to who their audience is. And now I'm hearing, for my Robert Greene crowd, the bit in Art of Seduction that talks about anti-seducers and the type of the, I want to say suffocator, the one that like gives emotional TMI before they're really ready, or kind of lets slip about things that aren't taking the needs and pleasures of the other person into account. So if this is someone from your past, another identifier of them is that you may have a history where they've either told you too much about themselves or they've told you too much about their opinion of you in a way where it's been like, whoa there, that's really not turning me on and I'm a little bit worried. Or they may just be someone who, if they're not from your past or whatever, they might be someone who says too much, right? I'm getting the REM song in my head now, right? Oh no, I've said too much, I haven't said enough, right? There's this constant seesawing again between too much communication and kind of not enough communication. Somebody who holds back a lot, but then when it is their time to speak, they're sort of unraveling their soul on you. And now I'm seeing the bit in the first Wayne's World where Wayne is trying to get the best of Cassandra strategically, but he's not a strategic person. And he says, and you and I both know there is no film in this camera, and leans on like an old-fashioned film reel, and the whole thing on a commercial shoot just starts shooting out and unraveling on the floor. Meaning like he didn't know the situation, he judged it before he had time, and he's just saying shit now that's doing him more damage. It's that kind of a vibe. But with it being Wayne that's coming through in my head, this is a good person. This, I want to say, is an upbeat person, generally speaking, or someone who has an overall optimistic outlook. They just might speak out of turn very occasionally. They're coming in faster than this Knight of Cups character, but I think they don't have like they're not dressed the same way, right? They're not, for some of you that's very literal. They're into very different things. They're moving in different worlds to your ex or to the last person you were vaguely involved with. But for others, this is like they don't need to have the amount of physical swag that somebody from your past did because they're not trying to prove something, right? Hank is very, he owns a garage. He's very down to earth. You always see him in jeans and a lumberjack shirt. And I know that that's appropriate to the time, but it's also completely free of affectation in a way that this guy, I wish I could remember your name. This guy is all put on. It's all for show. If he wears a lumberjack shirt, it's under several other fashionable layers, right? Now I'm thinking of Ben Affleck's character in Mallrats before he got massively famous, and he was that shitwit guy in Fashionable Male that wanted to do uncomfortable things with whichever women he could con, right? There's this sense of like presenting very well, but not having very good purposes behind you. This is just being what you see is what you get, and it's not always very polished, but it is noble, right? Hank is somebody who saves other people's bacon. He's the person you turn to in a crisis. And notably, of the Twin Peaks characters, he has one of the most, it has like a fan favourite love thing with Norma. It's one of the most crucial relationships to all 3 seasons, and it's also the one that has an arc that ends well, right? Spoilers for season 3, but they do end up reconciling, they end up together. So it's this thing of no matter how off and on it may have been with this person, or no matter how peripheral if this is a crush and how sort of out of bounds it seems, or how they present differently to you, because again, this is a very different energy to Ben's. Ben's very sort of polished. I think there's still a link there. There's still a coming together of genuine counterparts. Excuse me. Again, hiccups confirmation. What I want to say as well, and this may rub some of you up the wrong way, but hear me out. This is a love offering, but it's not a love offering. Ace of Cups in reverse is, I would give you my cup, but, right? And I think if this person does sense that you are traumatised in some way or attached to your past in some fashion, they're not going to come forward, verbose as they are, with the truth about how they feel straight away. Again, with the lumberjack shirt, so this is from this same energy. But it's this like, sorry, plaid, if you don't know what a lumberjack shirt is. It's a very UK expression, I think. It's like the love is there. This person has their eye on you. There's 3 cards expressing that they have their eye on you. There's only 1 card truly expressing sort of you as you, right? And they've got 3. So I dare say that their affection is of a greater proportion than yours towards them. But I don't think they're going to translate it as affection. And I actually think that's because if you do know this person, their communication has improved and they sense that there's some stuff for you to work out. So I don't think they're going to come forward and say, hey, do you want to go on a date? Or sort of tell you that they love you or give you some kind of romantic offer or offer of commitment just yet. I think that's coming because this is very much a counterpart. This is a big deal. This relationship is super important to who you are. I dare say more so than this, right? This was important for the lesson you learned. This will be important for who you become in it, right? With this person, hand in hand, side by side. But even though it's big, I feel that they know it's big. So they're going to kind of try and come to you, not covertly, not with any hidden intention. And I know you're a bit on guard for that stuff. But it isn't that this person's lying to you or sneaking around. I think it's just that they're going to be upfront in saying, listen, you have a past. I have a past. I sometimes speak before I'm ready. You have got your own stuff, right? Maybe we start as friends, or maybe we start in some kind of collaborative effort because there's a lot of creativity cards. So if you guys have something like that in common, you both sing, you both dance, whatever it is, maybe you do that together for a little while. Or maybe it's just that this person reaches out in a sort of more business-like fashion than you would like, or just in a friendly way, and you're sort of wondering whether it's a friend zone thing. I'm here to tell you that it won't be, but it will sort of seem that way until you give them the signal that all of this is out of the way. Because then what we're left with is an emperor with their empress, again, any gender, in very compatible environments. You guys may even live near each other or work near each other or something like that, with excellent and speedy communication and a very obvious and wonderful offer of love. Notice as well that this cup is from the double R, Norma's joint, right? So this is in partnership with this, and this is in partnership with this. I absolutely see a hope for you if you're seeing this as a singles reading. I don't think it will be long before somebody makes themselves evident in your life, even if there's someone from the past that you didn't think would return. As long as they're a wanted person, I think there is somebody coming back for you. And if you don't want anyone from your past, I think there is someone peripheral to you, already aware of your good reputation, who knows what it is that you need, and as a consequence will not present as just what you want, right? I hope that that makes sense to you. If you did identify with it, hit me up in the comments with how or with what happens next. Please like, subscribe, ding dong, thank you kindly. And I'm going to move on to our couples reading. So for any of you who are in a kind of off and on situationship with this Empress person, please do stick around and take a little bit from the couples stuff as well. Hello, love transmission for my couples. Thank you for scrolling down and or waiting patiently for your segment to begin. Let's have a look at how things are going to play out in love for this month. If you want more than a monthly update, by the way, there is a love playlist that you can check in with. A lot of my A to Z sort of psychic tombola lucky dip readings are love based. You just kind of don't know till you get there. So yeah, I want to say check out the rest of the playlist on my channel, or if you want something really specific, please do consider booking as well, because this is my day job. This wants to come out and this wants to come out, and then the rest of them want to resort themselves because something needs a bit of a refresher, doesn't it? Give me a sec, guys. What's happening here? Right, okay. Do you ever feel like in this relationship, you're meant to be a party to orchestrating it, but you feel like you're watching it from a distance in a way? Or you're... Let me explain where I'm coming from. So this first card is the Director. It's a card unique to this deck, because in this deck, the the creators of Twin Peaks, David Lynch and Mark Frost, are featured as extra major arcana cards, so we get a little bit more meanings. In this case, right, David Lynch is the director. He's on set, clearly. There's a lot going on for him. But he's not watching dailies. He's watching through the camera that he's filming with. For those of you who heard my reading, I think it was a Luna last time, where I mentioned Inland Empire and the scene where things are very dramatic and then they zoom out and it's sort of revealed to be a larger thing. Bandersnatch having a similar construct at one point, right? There's this sense that you were very focused in on a situation with your person, and then things zoomed out and you got a broader picture of, I want to say, life in general because of the other cards. And suddenly the entire meaning of what you were looking at changed. And it made you feel less like you were one of the people on set and in charge, and more like one of the people just observing, right? Just watching through the viewfinder. There is a sense of not being in control of something that was your orchestration. And when I call it an orchestration, I don't mean that you're manipulative within the relationship or that you're dominant within it and this person is submissive within it or anything like that. I just mean that any relationship, whether it's two of you or more of you, is a creative collaboration between individuals, not the rabbits, right? From the Rabbits sitcom thing, sort of staring at each other from a distance. This is what should be counterparts brought into an awkward framing. The Rabbits short films, if you haven't seen them, I'll link them down below so you can take a look. They do pop up in Inland Empire, which links it back again to this idea of zooming out. But also they're a very chilling, very uneasy kind of mini horror movie based around the idea of sitcom and how uncanny it is as a thing. It's kind of this structure of taking family life, taking life as a couple, taking regular boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, or whatever stuff, and I don't mean to be heteronormative with that, so just as you see fit, but taking this coupleness, right, and this thing in the home for many of you, and making it, just pointing out the weirdness of it, pointing out the gaps in the canned laughter, pointing out moments where things didn't happen in correct timing, or you didn't have the support of those involved, or there was a long and awkward space between something that was said and something that was interpreted. I feel like this is something that you're feeling in your relationship at the moment. There is a distance between your experience of partnership and the partnership itself. And while I'm going to say that it's not on you, I don't think it's on your partner either. I think it's on a broadening of the situation to include a scope which you didn't see coming. I say that because of this idea of zooming out onto the set and there kind of being a camera within a camera, but also because of this particular iteration of the Six of Cups, which is always a card about nostalgia, can sometimes be about family, but in this case it's very much literally about family. And we see Donna and her sister. Now, if I'm remembering rightly, is it Donna's sister in The Return that is the Amanda Seyfried character who is caught up with all the drug stuff with Caleb Landry Jones? Absolutely love him. And it's kind of the dark underbelly of Twin Peaks transfers from Donna, who had her own terrible time, to the next generation. If it's not directly her sister, I'm still like getting that in my head, so the interpretation may sort of be relevant. What I mean by that, if you're not a Twin Peaks fan, is that there is something here which is generational or has been discussed or passed between siblings, which is putting your relationship with your person into a broader context. Or indeed there is a situation where the imposition of family, the involvement of family members, etc., is weighing in on stuff or just broadening the scope of things and making your relationship have an entirely new meaning, right? For some of you, if you're more on the side of situationships or not quite single, not quite not, I think this is you reframing the connection you've got your eye on in the context of familial messaging, maybe even feedback from a sibling or from a female figure in family, as to what your expectations were personally versus were from them, and how that relates to you viewing this thing through a tiny viewfinder versus seeing the full scope of what it is or could be, right? So for some of you, you're fighting against expectation. For others of you, you're finally seeing, hiccups confirmation. You're finally seeing where your expectations came from and agreeing with parents or sisters or something like that as to what you want. You're going, oh fuck, I was viewing it through this tiny camera. And in actuality, it's the whole set, it's the whole image, right? This relationship can be or is so much bigger than I gave credit for. So it will vary for you as to whether this is no longer right for me and I'm seeing it because of family, or whether it's my family have weighed in on this for long enough. It is the correct thing for me, but I couldn't see its correctness because of a family intervention or a family information incoming. If you're in a long-standing connection or you're like living together or something like that, it's sort of serving the same function, so I don't want to like go too general from what I've said. But I think the situation that's brought this about is more like having to cohabit with family, having to stay with family for some kind of practical reason, having a sibling come over, having your partner's family suddenly weigh in some way or become involved in some fashion. And again, there's a tension between these people, but there's also a tension between your former idea of the relationship, indeed of the white picket fence ending, versus what it means to you now in the broader context of things. And that's echoed by this tree, which if you did come from the singles reading, again, this is the book house boys symbol. So pay attention to those first two cards and your past. But for those of you who didn't, who are just exclusively in a couple, this is the idea of a truth coming in that you possibly weren't ready for. And I don't mean that there's going to be a grand revelation. If you're seeing this truth is something that's already crept in. I think this truth is actually related to this blue box here, right? We've got the Mulholland Drive reveal, right? If you watch Lynch's clues to unlocking Mulholland as a film, if you watch it with those clues in mind, should I say, the blue box is kind of what unravels it as being a movie about two different perceptions of maybe the same thing. And I don't want to say more than that if you haven't seen it, because it's a great film. But it's like the thing with the Book House Boys as well is that they're like a club or like a tree house of kids meeting, right? There's a sense that they're doing real good in the world as adults, but there's also like a fun thing that they're a club and they have secret hand gestures. And, you know, you almost want them to have membership cards, right? And there's this sense of like getting together in an almost conspiratorial way to discuss things and to decode things. It's like a decoder ring for whatever is happening here, right? So in whatever sense this relates, whether it's the cool clubhouse bit or whether it's actually that a truth is revealed in a much more dramatic way, whatever is coming about in this familial situation or familial context is the decoder ring to your entire movie. And when I say movie on this channel, I always mean, what are you writing? What are you starring in right now in terms of you being the main character in your own life? That's not to push anyone into main character syndrome. It's not to be selfish. It's not to be self-centered. It's to say, if the life you're experiencing now is your movie of your life, is this how you wanted it to look? And if not, what can this revelation decode for you in terms of where you would want to go with it next? Because I think as well, coming into the next card and in Josie and the doorknob situation, whatever is being shown to you through family or through the idea of family, right? For some of you, this may even be a reproductive thing we're discussing. It's showing you that there is a sadness in you that has not been acknowledged or heard. Bear in mind, whether or not you're a fan again, Josie's transformation into, yes, a doorknob. It sounds weird if you haven't seen the show. It's even weirder in the show, quite frankly. she's transferring from a character with agency and personality into a literal inanimate object that cannot be heard. In the process of that scene, she screams and the wood freezes and we stop being able to hear what she's saying, right? I think there is something in you that wanted something from this relationship, be that a family of your own or a certain outcome, which is somehow being illuminated by your own family or ideas of family, and you're getting sad about it, maybe for the first time, because I think until you zoomed out, you couldn't express verbally, right, that you wanted this thing. So now you've gone from being this full Josie character to this like inert expression, and I dare say this has been a time for you which has been very tense, very fraught, where you've realised that I'm hearing the it's a bit of an old pull, but the Tori Amos song Silent All These Years, that was sort of an inspiration for some of the Sandman stuff. I'm hearing that playing in my head. So it's this idea that you've like, you may not have even been fully conscious of it, but there's an issue you've not spoken about throughout this entire relationship. And I think you're just grieving now that you never brought it up. And I don't even think it was necessarily like you knew about it and you just didn't say it. I think for many of you, it's that you didn't know to say it because you didn't, until this wider context appeared, you didn't know what you wanted. So you couldn't have asked for it, right? And always when I see the Ten of Swords, whatever deck it's in, but particularly with Josie, there's a pull to self-forgiveness here. There's like, all right, so this image, this picture of you guys as a couple, it might not be everything it was cracked up to be, or it might be that you've pulled out of frame a little bit and you're shocked because you're seeing a more complete picture than you were aware of, right? But that's not because you didn't speak up or because the truth wasn't expressed. It's because you had to get the wider context to know that this was a truth for you. Hey there guys, sorry about the bit of a break and interruption and slight screen change. What happened there I think is kind of pertinent to your situation, which is that as I was recording, merrily pulling more cards, as you can see, your reading's kind of finished out this way. I didn't realise that my phone was going to interrupt me with an update for an app that I didn't actually install, so half of the video feed was lost, but I think that this is a reflection of the fact that this situation we've just been discussing has recontextualised and interrupted your relationship at present, and maybe in talking about these cards anew, I can kind of get across things to you in a slightly different way. So, if I remember rightly, where we left off in the video feed was with Josie in the bed and the idea that something has been simmering under the relationship for a good long while, that needs to be kind of acknowledged, recontextualised, that there is communication from your end that didn't happen because Josie is in the inert knob and not in the human form. But that I don't want you to feel guilt about it not happening, because I think the reason you didn't speak to any of this was not because you're not assertive or because you don't care about the welfare of the other person or anything like that, but because you couldn't be aware of the full situation until this process of zooming out that was somehow either instigated or influenced by your family, their family, or the topic of family, right? So for some of you, you're talking about whether or not to have kids. For others, you're maybe living in a cohabiting situation with other family members. And for yet more of you, there's just family members weighing in or giving value systems to one or more of you that are no longer appropriate to weigh the context of the relationship under. What I began to say before I was interrupted was that for some of you, this will lead to the dissolution of this same relationship. This is a zooming out to the wider realization that as a couple, you're no longer functional, and that's okay. And that with the tiny picture of things that you had, this served its purpose and was fantastic for you in some ways, even if only for your learning. And then for an equal number of you, because this is a general reading, even though it is the couples bit, I think that this is like wanting to be more like a family or wanting to protect the relationship from the influence of family. And when I say that, I don't just mean them weighing in now, and I don't just mean expectations societally about what a family looks like, right? See Your Future Spouse, What You'll Fucking Hate About Them reading for more on the white picket fence and how to adapt beyond it. But there's also this like, there's a thing of you couldn't see that you were a family until you zoomed out enough to look at the wider world or to look at how other people relate to each other around you and to look at the messaging that you've received about what family means, that your person or people have received about what family means. And it's just like suddenly having whatever this idea of family is coming into the relationship, it's so much bigger for you. And you want to make a family, or you want to call it what it is, or, you know, you want to sort of, the word that's coming into my head is like canonize it, right? That's not appropriate because that's describing a single person. But it's that thing of elevating something to a status which goes down in the books, right? The book Houseboys being relevant with that. So whether it's that you're giving something up because of a wider context, or you're just having a realization that means that your coupledom is all the more sacred to you and perhaps needs to be protected by messaging from other people, whether they be with us currently or not, there's this thing of moving on towards a greater truth. Now, with the High Priestess being the log lady, firstly, I want to say she's holding the log at gut level, and the log is a magical object. So this is a gut realization for you. As we said, you've come to the intellectual point where you know that there's something that you didn't quite communicate before, and that might not be your fault. But I'm also getting that, like, your gut sense about this has been on point for a while. Maybe even with the later cards, that your person also knows what's up to a certain extent, or they know something is happening, right? We don't see Margaret without something more broadly magical going off, or without something being decoded. And spoilers for sort of towards the end, but because we've got a book Houseboys clubhouse symbol, then we've got Margaret decoding the series for us in all of the intros, the Log Lady intros, and then we've got Dr. Jacoby as like the part of the decoder ring of the expanded universe, as in like Secret History of Twin Peaks, etc., etc. There are 3 cards here that are about unraveling what this relationship is and coming to a wider awareness of it, but also about getting across what it is to other people, right? And whether that's to protect it or to explain to other people why perhaps it needs to evolve into something different, that's up to you. And please let me know down below what resonates. But whatever this is, with her being the priestess and with it being Margaret as well, you're keeping it to yourself for now, right? This is a secret, a sacred secret for you. She's also she's in like Margaret's bit of Sycamore Grove with the mountains. So again, the sense of weird stuff happening if you've read the books. And also her connection to the log. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't, but that's a relationship-based thing as well, right? But then she's also sat in the part of Sycamore Grove specifically where the planets are aligned, the doorway has been opened to the waiting room, and she's sat with a foot almost in the material of the Black Lodge, the oil stuff, right? If you haven't seen the series, this won't hit quite as hard because that abstraction is important to sort of get at a symbolic level. But what I'm getting at is that you are in both the world of the mundane and the world of a spiritual picture of this relationship right now. And you are very much in the awareness that you are on some kind of liminal threshold where you can pass through a gateway into making it something else. And that is for your highest good and for the highest good of the other person or people involved. So yes, you're keeping it quiet, but I feel like part of the reason that other people are peripherally aware of what's going on, even if it's not yet articulated, is because it's a kind of spiritually all-encompassing connecting thing. And if you're on the tarot channel, even if you're watching tarot atheistically or skeptically, you get a sense of this idea that things are connected, right? So you can't be going through this integral personal transformation regarding your view of you guys as a couple without some of that leaking into the outside world. And that's not a threat if you're not yet ready to talk about it. That's a reassurance that to some extent your person knows, man. Whatever it is you've been realising, they know. They feel it too. Just going to check we're all good and on camera, just because I am now nervous having done this again. The other thing as well is that when I got up to sort of reset things, realising that they'd gone off completely, firstly I took my camera, I took my microphone with me, and it's a clip-on mic on a lead, so I almost took the table with me. But I think the thing with that is that, like, speech isn't appropriate to take everywhere with you. There is a break happening here. Remember that all the Sycamore Grove sequences are kind of a break in the mundane aspects of the series. They're a pause between stages of Twin Peaks in a bigger way. And I think this is indication that you need to pause, and that in that pause, maybe you don't speak. And again, the High Priestess card is about silence. It's about maybe taking some witchy or spiritual time, if you do those things and if you're able at this time. It's about maybe retreating into prayer, if that's more like it for you, or just taking a step away, even if it's only within an afternoon, to process this, to fully understand it. And I don't mean listening to tarot readings, although I'm glad you're here and I love you. I mean really silent time to go, right, I'm going to admit that this has been going on all these months, years, whatever. And I'm just going to let it percolate, right, suitable for Twin Peaks, that this is the truth now, and that whatever doorway we pass through next, things are going to be wonderful and strange. Moving forward out of that energy, there is a nod to the fact that this was a friendship to begin with. No matter how you feel about it now, no matter whether I'm communicating to you about a relationship that's about to close down or one that's about to elevate and protect itself from outside influence, there is a sense within which you need to return to being friends for the next bit to transpire. There's also, like, namesake link and everything, but there's a link to the Lanonshi myth with the fact that it's these two guys meeting. It's the mayor and I forget the other guy's name, but I'll link it if I remember. But the mayor's backstory is very much tied into a retelling of a Lanonshi kind of a structure. So Irish mythology nerds, hi. Lost Girls fans, hi. Fellow Fraudians or Alan Lee fans, hi. I am all of you. And that may hit in an extra way if there's been any kind of sexual predation upon the relationship, temptations, betrayals, etc. But I'm not announcing that if you don't know it prior. What I am saying is that this friendship finds a need to be isolated from the archetypal vampirism of the outside world. So if this is a situation where you're cohabiting with a family you wouldn't normally be with, or where other people are weighing in on a situation which is not exactly theirs, or there's some element of outside intrusion upon a thing that should just be about you guys, I am being told to pass on to separate from that environment very intentionally and in a friendly way, not in a relationship way, not in a sexual way, not even from a business-like way of how do we work this out, but to say, hey, do you want to reconnect as friends? And the other thing that I did when I stepped away, because I was frustrated with the fact that I'd filmed so much and it hadn't recorded, was I had a slice of pizza. And for some of you, that's the way to do this, right? This isn't working out in its current iteration. I've gone away and thought about it. I've gone away and felt about it. And now I'm ready to come to my person in the spirit of friendship and say, hey, do you want to get a slice and just hang out as buddies? Not to sort it, not to address it, just to be away from whatever this shit was and to hang out as mates. And I think that that's your next step, right? Immediately following this reading even. With the one after that being the Eight of Pentacles in reverse, there is an inability to work on something. But more than that, with these stormy skies and the burning mill in the background, there is an imposition of the industrial, of the workplace related, of the financial or legal, of putting bread on the table, looking after immediate needs, even of looking after dependents, over sorting out this dynamic between you guys. So again, that may hit with like living with family members, because that might be an out of necessity thing, or it might be that you're caring for someone and neither of you have had the energy to put into this because your eye has been on the pentacles or the tokens. But with it being tokens, and with the one-eyed jacks references in the singles reading, if, big if, you identify with there being infidelity in this relationship or temptation towards the same because of the connotations of one-eyed jacks, this is a way of the universe saying, listen, mistakes have been made, maybe even on both sides, but you couldn't possibly have been focusing on those things when there was all of this other shit. So I do feel, I mean, I won't be announcing infidelity if you're finding this now and you don't know about it. But speaking to the proportion of my audience where you know that that's been a thing, or you know that it could have been, right? It's maybe been waved in your face or a partner's face as an option. I think there's forgiveness again needed, in the sense that neither of you could possibly address the ramifications of things in full while you had to be so focused on the materially immediate, right? So if you've been cheated on, for instance, I'm not saying forgive somebody, because it's not my place to say forgive somebody, because even though I've been in that situation, I've never been in that place in a marriage, say, and hopefully never will. But what I do want to say is, if you can't forgive, try to at least come to an understanding that neither of you were looking at the relationship to value it enough to say, this can't be done this way, right? Neither of you have been focused on this for a while, and that's why this happened. And if the shoe is on the other foot and you've been unfaithful, or you've had the temptation to be and you're feeling pretty shitty about that, again, I sense that you were snowed under with work, or with bringing home the bacon, or with putting out fires somewhere, or dependents or family members. Something very sort of materially based. For some of you, physical disability has entered in, because that's another meaning for pentacles. But it's like you weren't fully exchanging your token for somebody else in either case. You weren't saying, hey, I know what would be great. Let's trade this long-standing relationship for something that may be potentially meaningless. Here's my token, get on me. It was never like that, right? It was more a sense of, I have to keep so much eye on how to keep myself afloat, how to keep my partner afloat, that I'm not even thinking about where I'm putting myself, or not clearly, right? And that's where this stormy sky is coming. And the other thing I'm getting from this is the similarity to the Tower card, and the fact that the Tower can't come down if it has firm foundations, my dude. So whichever side this temptation or this infidelity has been on, it's because the relationship was not harking back to that foundation of friendship that you have. You weren't even acting like mates to each other, never mind a couple. So it's no wonder. And that's not me being damning or placing blame on you. It's just to say, if you want an understanding of this that leads to forgiveness eventually, that's the way to frame it. Now, if all of that wasn't relevant because nobody's been unfaithful and you don't think they would, and you're a bit sort of put out by that, don't worry. That doesn't have to be an interpretation for you. It's just, I need to address those who it's for, because it's quite important. But in your case, it is just like, neither of you have been paying attention to this, right? Your eyes have been on something else. You're putting out fires everywhere. And that's meant that it's only now that you're approaching a time where you're ready to work on it. But I do want to stress, in this next interaction with the partner, don't make it about the work that there is to do. I wouldn't even mention it, honestly. I'd mention pizza. I'd mention what you've both been up to. I'd mention movies you like, things you're interested in, maybe tarot if they're open to that. Maybe other things you have to talk about. This familial situation, if you can discuss it without it leading back to these topics. But just catch up as friends, right? And for those of you who came from the singles reading because it's situationship, again, the reiteration of your person isn't going to come in the energy of love. They're going to come in the energy of, hey, let's have a chat. And that is absolutely going to lead to what you want. Because this is really positive. With the Hangman in reverse, again, coming out of stagnation, right? If he was upright, I'd say hang fast, this is going to last for a while. With him being in the reverse, he's kind of ready to get on with things. It's Dr. Jacoby, and I always feel like his tie is pretty crucial to his character. It's like the thing that we get at the beginning to show he's an oddball, to show he keeps secrets, to show he has a bit of a weird sexual thing even. Like there's all kinds of character information given by his wacky hula tie. And the fact that the tie in this reversal is pointing to the sky, right? It's erect, it's aware. His antenna is pointing right back to God and he is illuminated. I feel like that's kind of crucial in terms of character showing somebody where they're going to go next, right? And with Jacoby having different glasses lenses, like yes, that's explored in the books, but for this particular deck and interpretation, I see that as two people who view the world in very different ways. Maybe one of you being more rose-tinted than the other, right? But it's coming together and becoming one vision, right? It's taking different focal lenses and putting them into one image, combining ideas about what this has been, what it could be, in a way that connects directly to what both of you want and who both of you are. The Hangman is also a sacrificial figure, and this is especially true of Jacoby in some ways. He is willing to be a pariah in season 3 in order to get his point across about the town. And even though he does so in a fashion that's kind of wacky for us and that we laugh at, and he uses a lot of symbolism and a lot of very kind of out there imagery, and he becomes this tinfoiling kind of Rogan-esque figure on the fringes of society in some ways, without ever getting the following of an idiot like Joe Rogan. I feel like Jacoby's arc is sort of to become the heretic that the town needs and deserves, for you Batman fans, right? It's he says what needs to be said, and he says it in a way that can be dismissed by the powers that be enough that he's still allowed to speak, because he's not directly addressing any of the FBI stuff. But it's also like clear enough to the residents of the town that they know what shit's going on and they know how to keep up with it. There's a sense that in order to be a messenger for the other person, one of you is going to have to make sacrifices in terms of how you come across. And for many of you watching this, I think it's you. I think you're Jacoby. I think you may have to start doing weird stuff for your friend, making them laugh, giving them the metaphorical golden shovel to shovel themselves out of the shit with in order to get your point across. I think this is very rational up until this middle point, right? You've come from a setting, you've seen it through different kinds of perspectives, you've processed it through the lens of family and familial messaging, you've come to a truth, you've realised how wounded you are for not having expressed that truth for a long time, you've decided to keep it secret and safe for now, but emotionally process it, and you've decided to have a meeting with this person who is, in the end, your friend, and to work on it. But it's kind of like the missing piece to all of that is, in order to be friendly, I think you have to be less serious about the journey you've taken. I think you might have to approach this subject as a joke. And that's not to approach the relationship as a joke or to trivialise what's happened. But I think the best way to move forward with all of this is to laugh at yourself or to laugh at the situation you found yourselves in. Now, keep it separate from this meeting. Like I say, in this friendship thing here, possibly over pizza, we don't want to talk about working on it. We don't want to talk about any of this. If you bring up family, make sure it doesn't relate back to it. Just concentrate on hanging out as friends, away from any psychic vampires around you. But for the next sort of interaction after that, even if it's the walk home, if you live together, I want you to get into the Jacoby kind of a vibe. And if you're not familiar with the show and you don't know what it is, get it from his costume, right? Waka waka, etc. But it's that sort of sacred jester thing of, I can bring this up by self-deprecation or by laughing at this widened environmental picture that we now have together, or by cracking a joke about our different lenses, if that's a kind joke and you know that your person would be open to it and they're not in a defensive space. But there's some way that you can open up, I want to say, the defenses that have been built against this conversation, using humour to benefit you both. And doing so in the spirit of Dr. Jacoby, because yes, he's funny, but he's also a psychologist, so he never uses humour inappropriately. He's not laughing at people, he's laughing with the situation in a way that is accessible to all. So you have people coming to him in season 1 as a qualified psychologist, albeit a bit of a dodgy one. You have people coming to him in season 2 as a close personal friend of Laura. You have people coming to him in season 3 as this new heretical outsider figure who drops knowledge in this tinfoiling kind of a way. All of those sequences of Jacoby are very different. And indeed, as the viewer, we come to him for another level in the books. But they all kind of share this thing of, I'm going to use the language of the person that I'm speaking to get across the message that's actually my point. So whatever this truth is you wanted to ask for or about, I think the way to get to it is laughter. But I want you to make sure that it's a mutual laughter, and it's one that comes from maybe even a trip down memory lane in terms of the original friendship, so that you can eventually work up to this hefty maneuver of the conversation about where we go next, how we either start to dismantle something that's not working or secure something that really is working against the outside world and reinforce it and take it to the next level. So for some, this is a pleasant conversation. It's just a regret that you haven't had it yet, right? And for others where it's not so pleasant a chat to have, I think that the way to make it accessible is to be funny, to be light-hearted, to be the butt of the joke where you can, instead of putting that on the other person. And over and above everything else, to remember that you began as friends and that that is the end goal, no matter where this goes, for both of you after. I hope that was helpful to you. If it was, please leave a comment with how it resonated, or click like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. I noticed some of my subscribers are not up to date with moon readings and stuff. That's not to call you out, that's just to say if you didn't click the bell when you did subscribe, it might be useful to do that so that you don't miss any of the kind of live readings when the moon goes through a specific phase. But if that's not you and you don't want to sort of be a part of that, I'm just glad you stayed thus far, and I hope you have a really amazing month or year or however long it is until you find yourself back on my channel. And take care and enjoy your time with your friend, right? Because at the root of it, that's what this is.